Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2019 Ford Transit Connect. So this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed, and you can see it's got a slightly visible cross tube. It kind of tapers up, but overall this is a really clean fit here. You can see the 2" by 2" receiver tube opening is about flush with the fascia, so it's really nice and it's going to be easily accessible when you put your accessories in. Now speaking of accessories, when you put them in place, you're going to be having a 5/8 pin and clip to keep those in place. Now the hitch does not come with the pin and clip. A lot of times your accessories will come with one though. And if you want to pick up a locking one, you can actually lock that in place with a key, and that way when you have your accessories loaded up, they're going to stay locked and not walk away in the hands of someone else. Now on the bottom you're going to see a plate style safety chain loop, and that's going to allow us to put larger clevis style hooks or even just a normal style hook here when we're hooking up to a trailer. Now a few quick measurements. Going from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point on the rear fascia, we're looking at about 1.5 inches, so that's going to be really good for your folding accessories like your cargo carriers or bike racks, and they're not going to make contact with the fascia. Now you are going to want to keep in mind with the hatch opening up when you have your accessories, just make sure you're not making contact with those. Now let's check our ground clearance. From the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground is going to be 12.5 inches. So pretty good for the hitch itself. I don't worry about this making contact, but again, if you have your suspended accessories, as you go up an incline, they can kind of dip down. So something to keep in mind when you have them loaded, but overall a decent amount of ground clearance. Now as far as the installation goes, I'm happy to tell you that this is a pretty easy one to do in your garage or driveway. You're just going to be fish wiring some bolts in to mount up the hitch, and all you really need is an 18mm socket, a 19mm socket, a way to tighten them, and a torque wrench, and you'll be able to knock this out in about 15 to 20 minutes. Beginning our installation, we're going to be under the vehicle obviously to get our bolts in place to get our hitch up. Now this definitely can be done in your driveway or in your garage, and we're going to start by actually laying out our hardware because we have two different size carriage bolts. So we have a 7/16 and we have a 1/2 inch. So make sure you're choosing the right hardware, as it is going to make a difference. The same goes with the fish wire. There's a smaller coil as well as a larger one for the 1/2 inch bolt here. And then we also have two different spacer blocks. You can see this one's centered and this one's offset. So starting off, we're going to be taking our coiled end here and we're going to be doing a reverse fish wire. So meaning we're going to feed our hardware in and then pull it down using this, but we're going to want to make sure we keep our wire attached. It's going to make installation a lot easier. So take your spacer block, feed that through here, and then we're going to take this coiled end and just feed our bolts on. And then we'll go ahead and just feed this in, so just kind of put it in an angle. You might need to rotate it a little bit here and there, but it should go in. And then you can feed your spacer block up and then just simply pull this down. Now we can go ahead and repeat the same process on the other side. Now we're going to grab our 1/2 inch bolt as well as the larger coil and the centered up spacer block. And this one's going to be slightly different, but not too terribly bad. We're going to feed it in through this oval hole. And then you're going to see there's this access hole right there. So now we feed our spacer block in. And then we'll coil this on. And then we'll just simply feed this in and pull this down. And then we'll go ahead and repeat that same step on the other side. So now with an extra set of hands, we're going to feed our hitch up. And we're going to run our corresponding fish wires through the hole. Now I also recommend having at least one nut on each side, and that way we can at least hand tighten this on to hold the hitch up for us. So the bolts or the nuts that come in the kit, there is going to be a larger and a smaller diameter to correspond with those bolts. So just make sure you grab the right one. And then you're just going to kind of raise this up. You can pull those wires through. And then once you have the stud hanging down, you can pull the fish wire all the way down. Just be careful, sometimes it'll kind of snap you. Or you can just uncoil it, whatever works easier for you. And then we're just going to take our hardware and get this hand tightened on. Sometimes you'll want to put a little bit of pressure by using the hitch or your finger to hold that in. And that way you can get this to rotate. And once we have a few threads started, that's going to hold our hitch up and make it easier to get our other hardware in place. Now with the hitch being supported by our hand tightened hardware, we can go ahead and take our other nuts and start those as well as the other studs, and that way we'll have all of our hardware in place. And before tightening them down, you're going to want to make sure that you actually have this aligned, centered up, because as you can see, there's a little bit of wiggle room, and you want to make sure that your hitch is actually nice and straight. So find the center point, line that up before tightening it down. And then when you are ready to tighten down, I'm going to be using an 18mm socket for our forward ones here, and then our larger ones are going to be a 19. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten them down. I'm not going to get too crazy here because I am going to follow up with a torque wrench in just a second. So this is just going to snug this up for us though. So now with these tightened down, I'm going to go back with my torque wrench, and they're going to have two different torque settings. The settings are found in the instruction manual, so just make sure you're adjusting accordingly. Now this is going to be an important step, so you're going to want to make sure you have a torque wrench to do this, and we actually have them available here at eTrailer, but you can also rent them at an auto parts store generally. But this is going to make sure that we have it torqued down properly to make sure that there's not going to be too much stress on the threads, but also that it's not going to become loose over time. So now with everything tightened and torqued to spec, we are ready to use our hitch. And that was a look and installation of the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2019 Ford Transit Connect.